Hi, my name is Lorne Brown. I'm a doctor of traditional Chinese medicine. My practice is in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. It's called AcuBalance Wellness Center. AcuBalance.ca is our website. And today I'm with Dr. Bill Bengston. Bill will be presenting at the Integrated Fertility Symposium in Vancouver, BC 2020. He's the author of The Energy Cure. I highly recommend that book. And he's also the creator of the Bengston Energy Healing Method, which I also had a privilege to attend one of his workshops. Bill, I wanted to ask you a couple of questions around your research on cancer in mice. And in particular, I wanted to start with the placebo. My understanding is that in the convention science in the world, when they like to do this gold standard RCT trials, they always look at this placebo versus the control. And I get that you have a different understanding of placebo, that they're not so inert and they're maybe getting, I think you call them type 2 errors. Can you kind of tie this in, and remembering that a lot of the audience that are listening here are doing a naturopathic medicine, acupuncture medicine, where they're often told that what they do is placebo. And I understand that you have a different perception based on your data of what could be happening.
Yeah, first of all, thanks, Lauren, for inviting me. I found I do primarily research on cancer, and my emphasis has been on cancerous mice. And among the things that I've discovered is that when we apply my healing method to a group of mice in a cage, that the control mice at some distance away also receive a benefit. And this would be analogous, directly analogous to what would be found in humans as a placebo effect. But what I'm getting is placebo effects in mice. I also get placebo effects in cell cultures. And so the general idea that placebos might be nothing more than suggestion, I think, is starting to become questionable. And this is related to the idea sometimes in the popular literature called non-locality. And non-locality simply could mean, or one of the offshoots of non-locality is action at a distance. And so in my data, in the laboratory data, what I'm finding is that physically separated mice or physically separated cell cultures actually have some sort of a bond between them. And if they have a bond between them, if I jiggle one cage, the other cage has a response. If I jiggle one cell culture, the other cell culture also has a response. And obviously, in the case of cell cultures, and I think fairly obviously in the case of mice, we're talking here not about something which is psychological suggestion, but something that might actually be physical. And the general idea here, the scientific assumption is that if you're physically separate, you're independent. And my data are seeming to indicate otherwise.
And there's two things that you said here to me that I want to emphasize. One is you mentioned non-locality, which for some people are like, okay, what's that's about? But the suggestibility, because I'm sure the rigorous scientists that adhere to this RCT protocol would not imagine that the mice or cell culture can be suggestible. So that's something that's important to emphasize here, that there can't be suggestibility based on how science has been looking at the placebo, because these are cell cultures.
Yeah, and once again, the faith-based assumption, all methods and all data analysis has a series of assumptions, most of them unexamined, but the assumption of a scientist traditionally trained is you get a group of volunteers. The volunteers could be people in a drug trial. The volunteers could be cell cultures. The volunteers could be mice. And I'm using volunteers loosely. And if the volunteers are separated into multiple groups, randomly separated into multiple groups, this group over here is independent of that group over there. And if that is not the case, then the entire logic of randomized trials breaks down. The idea of placebo-controlled trials breaks down because we're assuming that physically separate means independence, and I'm amassing an enormous amount of data that suggests otherwise.
And so when I was at your workshop, one of the things that I enjoyed hearing, and I know you're going to talk more about this at the Vancouver Integrated Fertility Symposium in 2020, is that when you have a group of people that are getting randomized into placebo or not, that already starts the resonant bonding. And so there's that connection happening. So both groups are being impacted by the treatment. And it sounded like, and this is where I need some clarification, it sounded like the bigger the group, the more placebo effect, and the stronger the intervention, the more result you got from placebo. Did I hear that correctly?
Yes, and it turns out that the placebo effect is related to the size of the study. And you'll find this in traditional drug trials where drug companies are scratching their heads and going crazy, trying to make the placebo effect go away, because it's very, very, very hard to get a drug past the placebo threshold, because as drug trials progress and you start with a small study and then a bigger study and a bigger study and a bigger study, as you do that, the placebo effect comes along proportionally as the study size increases, until it mimics statistically no difference between what is alleged to be an active drug and what is alleged to be a placebo. And drug companies who presuppose that the groups that they have, the people taking the placebo, are completely independent of the people taking the drug. I don't think they're independent, and I think they're misunderstanding their own data.
Dr. Bill Bengston, thank you very much. I want to remind people that you can check out his book, Energy Cure. He also has a CD. He offers workshops, so check out bengstonresearch.com, and then come see Bill in person at the Integrated Fertility Symposium in Vancouver in 2020. Thank you very much, Bill.
You're welcome.